So we have Melinda today. We're talking about diversity, which is going to be quite fitting for the month. And we like to pride ourselves in being one of the most diverse communities worldwide. So we can just get started just now. So I'd like to give it up for Melinda. By the way, for anyone who I put on my Instagram yesterday about stickers, I forgot all the stickers. They're sitting in the flat. So I asked Katie to get some stickers for me. So we have unicorn stickers if anyone wants some.
But the first question, does anybody here, so this one is all about girls. It's interesting, the words they have on there. And we can talk about non-words. I don't know if anybody's into it, right? There's a whole bunch of words we can't use now about our gender, which I like. Now I can't use my own vocabulary. B-A-E, what does it mean?
Bae.
I think it's before all else. Or
Before all else. It's like
no, it's short for baby.
No.
No.
It's like you're before all else.
Okay, so we got significant other, but what does it stand for?
So it's like, she's my girl.
Yeah, that's how
But it's, she's my bae.
Yeah.
But what does it mean? I mean, like, is it an acronym, or is it just bad English?
You just need to know that you never use it.
It's more like Urban Dictionary type.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
It's American.
It's American, and I don't even know it. Is it American?
I think it's before anyone else.
We had a chat with millennials earlier on. I think it's a millennial thing.
Okay, I own 3 of them.
By the way, this is an informal chat, so it's a conversation between us all. We sat and we spoke for about an hour and a half earlier on, and we covered all sorts of topics. So if you've got any questions during it, just raise your hand and we can have a chat about it. We like to start friends with a bit of context about who the person is that's actually speaking. So if you just want to kind of start with how you got started.
Sure. In
Technology.
making trouble or technology? All right. My name is Melinda Clarkson. As you can tell from my accent, I'm an American. I started in IT. Actually, my first job in IT proper was at the Sheridan Corporation, and I was an admin, and for the gentleman who was in charge of food and beverage. And I recognized that, I don't know if you've ever been to the Sheridan, Washington. At the time, it was the largest hotel in all of the Sheridan. It was during the Reagan and the Bush eras, and it was just huge. And there was 52 different departments, and they all had network printers. But all the secretaries, that's what we were called, or admins at the time, would type up stuff, print it, carry it, put it in mailbox slots, and then go back. And so I could spend my entire day, 4.5 hours, of just walking around 52 departments putting in the mail. And I realized they were networked. Sent it out, and I got in trouble because I used IT, and that time it was a network printer. And all the admins were angry at me because I just ruined their 4-hour walkabout with each other, right? So technology's always been one of those things that I embraced to enhance my life, to make things faster, to do better, and to lean in. I became a sales rep at Computer Associates for a bunch of years, left there. Then a client actually asked me to join IBM, and I spent 19 years at IBM learning some amazing things, all in software development. And the last 7 years in IBM, I was a global vice president that managed all the ISV and the developer relations aspect and alliances for commerce, supply chain management, digital marketing, and smarter cities and AI. So that's kind of my background. I left IBM, did an entire year of nothing, which is the hardest thing ever to do. I don't know if you've ever done nothing.
Like to.
It's really hard. I was so fit. I gotta tell you, the refrigerator was lined up perfect. You know, everything. It was the hardest year of my life and the best year of my life. And I made a list of all the things that I wanted to still do and what I missed. And lo and behold, the job that I now have as the CEO of CodeClan came up, and it fit pretty much every ticky mark that I needed for the next stage of my life. And so here I am, 6 months into this role as a CEO, working with a very diverse group. I struggle sometimes with the inclusion and how to get introverted developers to understand my raw kind of attitude. So if anybody can help me here, that would be great. I'm a champion of change. I'm a champion of diversity inclusion. I've been a minority many, many times in my life. And when you are one, you can all of a sudden understand how important it is to include others and to be aware of other aspects. And that's the journey we're on.
Yeah, so the title of this talk is Cheerleader for Diversity of Success.
Yes.
Did I get that right? For success. Tell me about what that means and kind of what brought you to that kind of...
That sentence. So one of my first jobs, I hired everybody just like me. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting meeting. But what I realized is that by having people that were not like me, opened up new perspectives, new different ways to think, different aspects, and it grounded me, because you can tell I'm a bit more up here of a person, and that having diversity amongst my teams, whether it was how you thought, or what they looked like, or gender, religion, preferences, culture's huge, and that assisted me in building better teams. Then as I grew in IBM and started to have worldwide jobs, you just say, it's American, right? And Americans, we come in with an attitude, don't we? I'm sorry, but we do. We've been raised with this, we're the best, we're the biggest, and you walk into some other countries and they're like, go away. You have to respect their culture to be able to be included, to then be able to have business conversations and to be successful. And Russia was one of the hugest things that I learned about how they do commerce, right? So different from how we do it in the UK or how we do it in the US. And then learning Asian cultures, and absolutely, like when I first moved over to the UK, when I was a nanny at the time, I didn't understand why people took naps in the middle of the day, right? What's a siesta? You're just being lazy? So that learning the culture and then being able to understand it, embrace it, I was then included more in conversations, we could have better business, we could have better understanding, and so that's why the cheerleader of diversity, one, it makes me a personal better human being, and it can make your business a better place. And one of the sentences that I was telling Daniel is that in IBM, one of the key things, and they're a huge diversity champion in general, but if you don't look like your client, you won't have that client. And so that was a big thing about having a diverse field of people so that you can relate and grow as a business.
So you spoke a bit about kind of embedding within people's cultures.
Mm-hmm.
As an American coming into a Scottish company that's already established and becoming CEO, how do you tackle that, almost coming in and changing it, or building a culture that's your own?
You can't change it, because it is a Scottish-based company with foundations to grow the Scottish digital economy, and I have to embrace that culture versus have that whole American attitude, I need to be like us. And I think that's a big thing about the whole inclusion aspect. Trying to understand what works for that culture, that company, the growth. Many people talk to me about, we have a UK-based company, but we want to go to the US, or we want to go to France, or we want to go to Germany. You absolutely have to open your brain to understand people do things differently. They talk differently. They're going to do it differently. So one of the big ones is pretty much everybody in the UK don't do conference calls. You all get up and you go to a physical meeting. What a waste of time. In the US, you'll have one physical meeting and then everything else is text and phone, right? Because we save all that time getting in the car, going someplace. But here, if you don't get the business, you don't get the relationship. You're much more eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder. Let's have a chat. Let's get to know you, eye contact, and to build that trust. And so you just can't go smack a new culture on top of another. Can't. So you have to embrace it.
Right. I mean, I was in America February, and I built relationships over there, and it's really different. Like, I mean, I did a bit of work for a company who did some stuff for Google. We built this relationship with this guy from Google, and I was really confused because we went for a meeting with him and he brought his whole family. And this isn't just a guy that's got 2 kids, he's got 7 kids. And that seems to be the way that they do face-to-face meetings. It's relationship building with not just you, but with
Dog, a cat,
the brother. I think his brother was there, his wife was there, all his kids were there. It was just a complete mess. But yeah, I can see why we would need to kind of, you would need to try to do that as opposed to forcing your culture on someone else. So we were talking a little bit earlier about customers and about building a brand for customers and building a diverse team that looks like your customers. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you would structure your team, your target demographics, developers? So how would you structure your team if you were targeting developers?
Well, we are targeting developers, but what we're trying to target is more women, or more diverse, versus the white male hoodie, stinky Converse shoes, t-shirts that don't quite fit. Yeah, I'll go into the whole thing.
I'm a developer, by the way.
Just give it a bit of a poke. So we did a few things to try to make it accommodating and comfortable. Right, so how many people here, I mean, if you walk down the street and you see a pub, you look at it and think, am I going in there or not, right? The image that the pub gives you, or the music that's coming out, or you open the door and it still smells like the cigarettes and the beer on the rug, right? You kind of, So it's the same thing in business, right? We use all our senses on when you walk into a business or when you're going to put money down for anything. And so what we did is we sat back and we thought, okay, how can I make CodeClan more appealing, more inviting to a different type of culture or a different type of diversity? And amazingly, I rearranged the office in Edinburgh, and we've now moved here purposely because it's going to give a different kind of vibe to who we're going to attract. We'd like to have more women developers that are teaching. There's not a lot of them out there. So we're looking for them and trying to bring them on board. We have 3 at the moment of 20, so not the greatest numbers, but we have a lot of women in other aspects of our business. But the first thing we did is we made it look like home. So in Edinburgh, when you walk in, it looks like your living room, instead of looking like the downstairs basement. Okay, brought it up a level. You know, there's plants, there's lighting, there's color, there's different things, because people are attracted by different aspects. And in your businesses, when you look at your board or you look at the people that face your client, do they look like your client? Are they inviting to your client? And that's the question to ask, right? And we were just talking about, you know, he needs a new hat, not you, but his mate. But it wasn't inviting for kids, right? It was the first thing I thought. So just let you know, within 90 seconds, you've made a judgment about everybody in this room. 90 seconds it takes, and we make a very quick judgment about, will I like that person, will I not like that person, will they talk to me, are they comforting or not? And so in that 90 seconds, whether you're a business, you gotta make it diverse, so that anybody that walks in the door, they can see somebody that might be like, okay? Just a little tangent on that. Yesterday I went to the diversity, anybody here go to the diversity and inclusion seminar? Couldn't go, but you know.
Have a ticket, couldn't go.
Okay, you didn't miss much. It was good. There were some key speakers, but what they didn't do is give us suggestions about how to embrace or change. Right? It was good conversation, good panels. Anyway, it was a diversity conference that went out, and this one woman named Natalie, she was fabulous. She works for Glasgow Life. We were talking about her, and she said that there is a minority stress factor. There was a very interesting conversation about that if you feel like you're the minority in the group, you have stress about that. And if you see somebody else like you, your stress reduces. So we look for like people in groups. And so if your company or my company looks like who we're trying to attract, there's less stress, more business happens.
Interesting. So would you say, and your target demographic is everyone? Let's just say for instance, actually, before I get into this, who actually thinks about diversity when building their team or their startup?
Well, now I'm
So it also just is, how many people here have a diverse board?
No. But in my work, I was the first female in tech support.
There you go. Thank you being a trailblazer, there you go. Congratulations.
That was quite a scary thing because it was a male-dominated group. Female coming in, I was subjected to a lot of jokes and sort of things about me. It was quite hard to overcome, but it seemed to be a better team because of it.
Yep.
Now there's like a sort of almost, I wouldn't say half split, but maybe third split between male and females. So it's quite good.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about earlier about this, about having a kind of diverse management team, not just in race and politics and
Gender, religion, we can go through the whole thing of
we can
diversity,
go
it's
through
like that
a
long
lot.
of a list.
But it's about having it in almost your attitude towards things. So how important is it to have one, a diverse management team, and two, a diverse board structure?
Yeah. So let's start with the board. It's an interesting one. I was recently at EIE. Anybody here at EIE? Okay. And I went to the PwC dinner, one of the nights, and they had 6 investors, whether it was private equity or structured equity. And I asked, how much does diversity mean to you when you invest in a company? 3, there was only 6. So 3 said, don't care. It's all about the bottom line. And then the other 3 went, yeah, we won't invest unless the board is diverse. And they have to have 1 female. And I thought that was a real interesting aspect about how investment is shifting a bit. And I asked more questions, why? And they said, 1, females aren't as risk, they have different risk structures to them, and they balance it better. So if we're giving them $3 million, we know the female's gonna manage it better. It was kind of a really blunt, backhanded smack. Like, okay, we manage things better, now you care about us. It was like one of those really weird kind of sentences, but they looked at it. And the other one was that they would attract different type of business models because they had different views. All right, so it was gender oriented, and then it was experience oriented. In my board, I want experience oriented. Yes, we can have gender and race and culture and all of that, but on my board, I want them to have different type of experiences so they can offer to us different avenues, question different avenues. On my management team or my leadership team, I want a very diverse group so I can attract talent. And if I only attract people that look like me and act like me, then I'm only going to get me's. And that's not going to give this broad remit of what my business is all about. And so we were talking, I have a star picture that I always do. There always needs to be 2 grounding people. Do their finance, ops. Not that I don't love them, but I don't love them. They're usually the complete opposite of me because I'm like, let's go. And they're like, no, we can't. But you have to have them because they're going to keep me grounded because I'm going to go visionary, I'm up here. And then I need, in the star point, I need 2 people that think about growth or sales and marketing and product development. But those people might be opposite, right? How many people have salespeople and product development? Do they ever get along? Right? First sales is saying, oh, come on, we need these 16 new features because, I'll make it up, JP Morgan wants them. And they're like, well, no, if we have to do it for JP Morgan, then I have to have release, no, we're going to keep it based on. well, if you've ever been in software development, you know how those arguments go. CEO and finance, sales and ops. And so what happens when you do that, your star gets bigger, but yet still stays grounded. And so that whole diversity about the personality doesn't have to be gender, or it doesn't have to be race or religion or any of that. It's really about their mindset, about how they think. And that's one of the things that we don't, when we think about diversity, we don't think about the mindset, the cultural mindset of the individual. And that's pretty important, because if we were all closed our eyes, half of the diversity problems would go away, because we wouldn't see color or race or different religions and all that stuff, because we wear it pretty much on the outside. If we just closed our eyes, half of it would go away. So mindset, I think, is one of the diverse aspects that we have to add into a business.
I was curious when you were working with IBM, and they started championing diversity, they started pushing it. Was there particular aspects that they championed, and what was the consequences of that?
Yeah. So at one point in time, they realized they didn't have enough women in middle management. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been the minority and then all of a sudden there's all these programs that come along to help the minority come up, some people are like, oh, that's so degrading and such. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. So, wasn't enough women in middle management in software. Women weren't staying, right? We'd get jobs and we wouldn't stay in there, so they needed them to stay. And so they hired 300 professional coaches, individual coaches, and gave them to a set of individuals, including myself. I've had my private coach now 16 years. She charges $650 an hour. And I got that for free for 7 years. Now, afterwards, I negotiated her down and she's still with me, but that was one of the consequences. And it felt like, a lot of people think that targets are bad, right? And I'll never forget the statistic. We had 4% Asian women in leadership. And the goal was to get to 10. Now, were we promoting people that maybe shouldn't have been promoted? If you closed your eyes, would those people have been promoted? I don't know. But do the targets help change the culture? They do. And then typically what happens is, as those numbers rise, the people fall out because they aren't skilled, right? So if you've been raised up because, excuse me, I'll say this, you're female, you're pregnant, you got one leg, and your mom was, some other culture, you get all the ticky marks in the score, you might get brought up a level, but in the end your skill will hold you there, right? So IBM did a lot for women, did a lot for Asians, especially Asian women, in getting them up, and those targets were very serious and met, and there was benefits of them. And that's actually where, if we get to the part where I've become this cheerleader about coaching, mentoring, and really being a cheerleader of change, because you can bring somebody up or they become a statistical number, but unless they stay, it doesn't matter, right? They have to stay, they have to make a difference, they have to do it. But I commend IBM for what it did in its diversity. Pretty amazing and pretty open. Yeah.
I've got a question, but it might take us in a slightly different tangent, so feel free if you want me to keep it till later. But it's on that, the targets around kind of the retention of those women in middle management. So that's kind of my bag. That's kind of what I'm working on in my startup with. Our programs around kind of what are we doing around maternity leave, and how can corporates take more responsibility for maternity leave and not see it as this big scary thing that they can't touch. So I've been working on that, and some of the things that kind of come back in those conversations, that the big barrier that I have is that I have got to change the conversation. I can't just go out and say I've got this great program that's going to help you to retain these women, and this is how we're going to do it, and if they're any good they'll stay there because I'm going to coach and mentor them as well as giving them a good maternity leave experience. But it is that mindset where, how willing are people to get their hands dirty? How willing are they to actually invest and have those open conversations? And I think that for a lot of those companies like IBM and other big businesses, bringing in a coach, which is already their language, they've already been doing executive coaching, and yes, you're putting a lot of money into it, but how do you actually untap that cultural conversation? How do you unlock that conversation? You know, that is a cultural mindset across the globe, that businesses just don't get involved in maternity leave.
Because they're scared.
Because they're scared.
Yeah, they are.
So is that about the numbers? Because it seems that with IBM, it was the numbers that were talking. It was the fact that, you know, we are losing, you know, it's something like for every female employee you lose, it could be as little as 30 grand, it could be as much as 150. So when you look at those figures, and I go in and I talk to men in the boardroom, I have to talk statistics, because they don't get about the emotional engagement side of it. So it's really interesting you hear you talk about the different environments to attract more women in.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually take that conversation somewhere they haven't been before, that's quite a big journey.
Mm-hmm.
And has there been any experience of that you found in conversations like where you've been with IBM and you're looking at these things where you've gone beyond the language that they already accept, which is, well, coaching, we'll have to have somebody talk to her. You know, have they ever explored anything else in your experience?
So there's a few things. So the first level is there's a nervousness. And when I talk about inclusion and diversity, I think you should really be curious. You should almost be like the 3-year-old and ask those questions. Like I asked somebody, how do you wash dreadlocks? I don't know. Tell me. And by having that curiosity without being condescending or any of that kind of, teach me, right? So you got to get the board to get to a point of curious.
Yeah.
So curious, that tends to be, you have to give them words they can use that are safe. Safe words. They are. They absolutely are. Okay. So how many men would be very comfortable here to say, so, you know, when you had your labor, did you, you know, you start getting into that, you'd be like, oh God, I don't even want to go here. So comfortable words that they can use that they're not going to be embarrassed about, but they're slightly high level. The female then goes, oh, he was asking a really careful question, a mindful question. And I can say yes or no, right? I don't have to go tell them a whole long story and, you know, said blah, 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 right? And he's like, oh God, I wish I didn't ask that. So you need to give them, that was one. IBM recently went through it right before I left about transgender, okay? Was the #1 issue in HR in IBM, okay? And I don't know about you, but, you know, it's just not something that, I can talk a lot about pregnancy, I had one, right? So I can have that. But not a lot of people have gone through that in general of population of life. I don't know the total numbers. But what do you do? How do you support it? How do you talk about it? How do you make the uncomfortable comfortable? And that is a big one. And so what they did is they explained that when someone goes through a gender change, there's steps that they have to go through. That was nice. It was easy. As a manager, I could understand there were these 8 steps. Okay. So I could say, so what step are you in? I didn't have to ask any other question. And they go, oh, I'm in step 4. Okay, good. Step 4, good. Okay, know what that is. But it allowed me to start a conversation. I'm being cheeky about it a little bit, but I was, you know, I'm serious, that they were in a place that not a lot of people have experienced. I was given the tools to have a conversation, that I didn't have to go too deep. The individual could give it back. And then one of the steps of being transgender, they have to send out an email to their colleagues or tell their colleagues why they're making the change, why they picked the name that they're picking, and what they want to be through this journey. And I gotta tell you, it's a bit, you really, I mean, it's very, very personal. Very personal. And because of that, people embraced it. They had enough knowledge now and enough acknowledgement. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, right? But on the flip side, you know, this one gentleman, he kept wearing orange nail polish with pink shoes. And, you know, I walked up and said, this doesn't go, bud. You gotta get in the flavor here, right? And he's like, oh, thank you. And, you know, you had to break the barrier, but it is uncomfortable. You gotta give the words. You gotta coach them through the stages. And then you also have to teach the females how to coach them. And I think that's something that in many cultures, or right now we are talking about the millennial chip on the shoulder, for diversity right now, especially in the US. Oh my goodness. You can't wear anything, you know, cultural appropriation, I have a problem with the word. You can't wear anything that's not your culture without being lambasted. that you didn't go through the struggles of that culture, religion, or race.
You mentioned dreadlocks.
Dreadlocks.
I read a thing about this recently.
Right, dreadlocks, the braids, you can't wear Asian clothing, you know, some actress wore an Asian dress to something, she got lambasted across it because she's never had that, and she's a white, privileged woman, you know, I mean, it's really swirled to a point of like, I don't even know what to call myself anymore. But in that, understanding someone's cultural journey, understanding someone's journey, being able to talk about it, lightens it, and then people embrace it, right? I mean, think about your grandparents, right? Do you think they embraced everything that we do today all the time? I mean, would they embrace purple hair? No. Right? Oh, no. Old ladies had purple hair, right? Yeah, it's just generations through time. So I don't know if I helped you.
I've got a question to make for that, sorry. Have you heard of any of the studies being done? There have been some recently in Silicon Valley which prove the effectiveness of diversity in startups.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think one of the first ones that was actually back in 2004 by University of New York. And what they did was they used computer algorithms to prove that diversity was the most effective way of building a startup. And there was a lot of backlash about this because a lot of data said otherwise. You know, if you get a group full of people from the same cultural background together, well, it looks like they get something off the ground faster. And that's because there's less conflict right
Yes.
at the beginning. But then using algorithms, they proved that if you give a group of intelligent agents or say people a problem, and they're all very similar and they approach the problem in a similar way, you know, they often, you know, hit a brick wall and the problem doesn't get solved nearly as efficiently. Whereas if you've got much more of the diversification of different approaches, found that much more efficient solutions were found much more quickly. And startups that started to incorporate that are actually getting ahead of their competition because they can solve problems much more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So just a wee talking point.
Yeah, but that's why I asked the investors if they were looking at diversity of the board for that, and it was a 50-50 split. And they said, you know, last year they had never looked at it.
Yeah.
And it's 38% increase over your competition if you have a diverse team overall, and 24%, and just put a female on your board or you're a female in your 24% up. Go figure. I don't know.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We spoke about this a bit earlier with kind of people hiring their own image and kind of early teams. So how important is it with an early startup team to get that diversity at the start? Does it start to snowball at that point? And are they then a more diverse team overall, or do they still need to think about that and to kind of keep diversity in the forefront of their mind while they're building their company?
It's just, I think, to your point, and this is my opinion, I don't have any statistics on it, but that if you want to do something and get it off the ground, probably best to do it with like people, right? It's just my opinion because it gets done. Then you add the diversity to get the different viewpoint as it grows and scales. But as we talked earlier today about, there's different type of leadership styles for different stages of the business, right? Just like there's different parenting styles for different types of, you know, age of your children and actions of your children, right? So when you're starting up an idea, you need less structure, less barriers, because it's hard, really, really hard. So getting it up and going, if it's like people to do it, and typically it's two founders, you know, two mates, they like each other, you know, mother and daughter, whatever, they get this thing going. And then all of a sudden you need money and investors, or you start asking other people, and then that starts to bring in the other types of diversity. One of the things we can talk about in software development, women look at websites very different than men. We buy different. And you just even go to commerce. We totally buy different than men. So if you only have men programming and developing your website, guess what? They're not going to understand the other aspects. Or culturally, right? And you know, some people with certain colors or certain, you know, doing this in certain countries is a bad thing. So, you don't want the okay, your order's done. You're like, ooh, right? So you need to understand about culturally how people would look at your site or deal with your software, and then that equals then into the diversity of your team. It matters how broad you want to go. If you're only going to sell to, and I don't know Glasgow well enough, but to the Liege aspect, I guess it's only going to be people that are from this area. But if you're going to have something that goes global, you're going to have a global thought.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask, just going back to earlier when you spoke about kind of having targets and quotas, how useful is that? Just digging into that a bit, so whether it's going to be building the team from the ground up or if it's the management team and you think, right, we need to be more diverse, we need more women or different backgrounds, how do you avoid that looking like a token gesture? Both the person coming on board feeling I am the token, and then for other people saying, well, you've just been brought on because
You're a
you don't
token.
look like us.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know you said earlier it's kind of, we'll see if they last or not, but then if they don't last, that surely just compounds the got the
Yep.
job because of.
So how many people here have been a token? I've been a token. You been a token? Anybody else been a token? All right. Did you like it or dislike it?
Quite liked it.
Me too. Did you quite like it?
I like it.
I did. So it gives you a step up. It does. In an environment that's never fair, right? So if we say, and I'm sorry, gentlemen, and I think you get picked on so much. White males, right? You get the first foot through the door and the others don't. So if it's a token that you get your foot through the door, great, then you have to perform. But I agree with you that there's an aspect of targets for target's sake. And I've even been one of those that said, she got the job because, right? She wasn't skilled, right? Because she was, honestly, I can tell you her name and everything. She's a friend of mine now. But, Irene came on. She was an Asian woman who was married to the senior vice president. Okay? Token. And yeah, she got this great job and didn't have to work hard to get there. But then she started to perform and do the things, and she did it, and then she earned her right to the token slot, I guess. But it's hard when I'm sure someone said, "Oh, she got that because."
So just embrace being
Nah.
work harder.
That's all I can do around.
Do you know, I don't even think it's about kind of like accepting it or seeing it as your foot in the door or, well, I had to get in somehow. For me, it was always about opportunity. It was kind of like, well, okay, fine, I've got this far, and
Exactly.
now I'm going to prove my gender right.
Correct.
And
An
not
opportunity.
turn it into a gender debate, but at that point it was, and yeah, it was more about that kind of that opportunity. But I think what's interesting about what you're saying, and something I'm aware of too, is that hopefully, as and when I scale, there will be a need for me to have people from different ethnic groups because of the makeup of professional women across the UK, and they all have different birth experiences, they all have different postnatal practices. They all have different views of their role in the workplace once they've had a baby. There's lots of stuff there that I'm not going to get, and I'm actually going to have to kind of recruit in a similarly discriminatory fashion because I'm going to know exactly what I'm looking to get. I'm going to need those people from those backgrounds. How does that work?
Well, it's the mindset. So you go to the mindset. Close your eyes. Would you choose that person not seeing them?
Yeah.
Their mindset. Now you're looking for experience, so that kind of limits it.
Yeah.
But you could bring in some dads. Actually my COO.
I've got dads, I'm good with dads.
All right.
Loads of them. 5 token dads.
Well, but it's a mindset.
Yeah.
You're looking for different mindsets that come along. In mine, so I said to my board recently, I said we need to have, our board is, there's women and men, but there is no one of any color. And I said to the chair, well, I think we need a bit more diversity here. And she goes, it's really hard to find,
Whereas to me, diversity is always been. Like if you're an individual who is open-minded, who's open-hearted, then you are naturally diverse. And my only concern is we start to focus on the statistics, the numbers, the data. But for me, it's very much an internal process. So perhaps it's more coaching leaders or managers to work on their own perceptions.
Yes.
And I'm from Glasgow, and my granny had purple rinse.
There you go.
Very bigoted women, I loved it dearly. But it was that as mindset, that's an internal. So you can do all this work on diversity all you want.
It's mindset.
Okay, it is, and it's an internal thing.
Totally.
Like, to me, that's where we need to work on it as much as the statistics and getting the numbers right. It's what do we really do as individuals to change behaviours, mindset, and so that we actually naturally want to engage with people. So some of the conversations you're talking about,
Make them comfortable.
it's not a natural process. You're genuinely interested
Yep.
in the human being in front of you, not
Yeah. Not the statistics in front of you. I was doing a very interesting presentation about the human face of artificial intelligence, and I won't go into it, but it was a very interesting conversation. Someone raised their hand and said, "Has artificial intelligence and big data made us more prejudiced?" Think about it. All of the marketing data that you're marketed at, is because of your unique preferences. And those unique preferences go down to race, religion, sexual preference, disability, a cultural aspect. And so we want to market to one. You want to open your phone on a Sunday that said, "This is the perfect product for you," because they collected all that data, right? So when you start to do that, do we segment people now into such a point of being not diverse, right? Because we're going to say, well, Melinda only likes this because of her race, religion, culture, sexual preference, and this. Well, now you've just singled me. But isn't that what the marketing and all we want is to not get, me being told I need Depends because I'm over 50, right? So I don't know, you know what those are. Adult diapers. Okay. So because I'm over 50, they'd send me those ads. Well, I don't need those ads because I do yoga and I'm fit and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to send me things that are more associated to me. But in that, now we have so much data that tells you culturally all of the differences, and we're segmenting them by how we're marketing to them. So it flips from having this inclusive mindset to being a unique individual of one that can have a lot of prejudice to it. So imagine if someone steals that database that they know culturally all of the transgenders that are happening in the Glasgow region, and they all get the same ad on that same day. Is that profiling? Racial profiling? Or is it selling them a product that they only want? So a little bit scary on that whole AI aspect into this conversation. So I way took us off course.
we spoke about that earlier as well, about people only buying kind of in the image of themselves. People who, let's say you were a black woman who was interested in tech, you would need to be able to buy off, you would traditionally want to buy off a black woman who is interested in tech, so people buy in the image of themselves. How much importance does that hold compared to just traditional targeting people? So you have, if you have a team of all white males, would you be able to target a black woman who's interested in tech, or would you need to have that diversity in the team?
Yeah, it goes to the conversation. So I was watching the news last night, and I didn't know that brokers and fund managers and those in the US, 96% white males. 96%. That kills tech any day out, right? We're at 72% male. And there was a woman on who just started a new company that was focusing on women's saving and investing habits, because women have a different investing mindset than men. And so one of the questions we spoke about is, do you challenge the establishment? Do you go in and say, brokers, you're bad, you're all men, you're all white, you're all this, you're all privileged, you all went to Harvard, whatever, and you try to infiltrate to change the diversity? Or do you just go create another business that meets that need, right? So it's an interesting concept of, they're not meeting the need of this marketplace. And the interviewer said to her, well, but you're only going to target 50% of the US. And she was like, so? You know, I mean, and they're not being serviced today. So rock on, right? She was just going to go for it. But to the point that, you know, I'll share your Lush story. You know, he was uncomfortable going into Lush, right? We all know who Lush is. It's a cosmetics, natural, organic soaps, I guess.
I'm not ashamed to say I love bath bombs.
But he was brought in because he had to do something, a gift for your sister, right? Christmas gift for your sister. Started talking. Yeah. Well, no. What he says is that then they talked to him, and then all of a sudden he saw male products, you know, for beards and double baths and what did you like, the sparkle ones?
I love sparkly stuff.
Okay. So now he's feeling better, but when you went in, you said, wow, there was a guy with a beard, he could have told me that this beard balm does amazing things. It would have because he had the experience that you wanted to hear from. So people want to have similar look and experiences from the people that they want to trust, right? So if a man came up to you and said, you know, that birth was hard, you wouldn't go, I think I believe you? You wouldn't. But if a female came up and said it, you would take credence to it, right? And you'd feel more comfortable. So to your question, if you're going to be in a team, you know, how many people here have bosses that you're not comfortable with telling them all your personal stuff, but you would tell another type boss that was more similar to you, and you could tell them. That's why HR is usually females, you know, it's because people are more comfortable talking to them, right? It's just the nature.
Thanks for sharing that story.
I didn't say how many times you go back.
Oh, less often now. I used to go back quite often. So, I mean, coming back to that kind of pushing the boundaries and building something new, or kind of playing the game and almost working within the establishment to make change. I mean, I think that's what entrepreneurship's all about. You're building the change yourself. So I want to kind of, we've not got much time left, so I want to kind of quickly touch on women in tech and how you're looking to change that, and then we'll kind of go into your kind of cheerleader model.
Yeah, put them together, save the time. So I started a digital women's group for CodeClan, and the reason why is women, first off, aren't as interested in going into tech. Well, let's back up. We lose girls in STEM type courses, so science, math, engineering, and technology, typically between ages 11 and 14, okay? One, it's hormonal, right? They're going through, you know, they're growing up, they're being girls, all of a sudden the whack of hormones come in, they have no control, really, they don't. And the boys are doing some games and stuff, and they are the stinky guys in the basement, you know, one of those kind of things, and their girls are changing, and so all of a sudden, their common activities diverge. And what we need to do is capture those girls, like with the product that you've got, and also talk to them that tech, you can be a superpower in tech. You can be a superpower in science. And because they haven't been rewarded by our grandmas who would say, don't you want to get married and take care of babies? Right, that kind of thing, it's still out there. It is, and it's, you know, grandmas are still pulling that, and my mom still does it on me, you know, and it's just like, really, Mom? Come on. So, and she does it to my daughter, and so on. So we need to help women, girls and young women understand that any profession is available to them. Now, some are more accepting. You know, it's hard to be in construction. Some we're not physically built for, and others, you know, we can use our brains, we can go anywhere. So that's the first level of that. But when getting women into tech, one of the things that, I'm not a feminist like rah, go women per se, but if I turned around and said 48% of the population that are females work, 76% of the population are male that work. If we want to take Scotland's GDP up, who's the target audience we need to go after? Okay? We can go after the 14% left of males, or we can go after the 52% of females to raise the GDP up into the market. Tech's amazing. Women do well in tech, and it's not just being a developer or QA tester or what. There's sales, there's marketing, there's HR. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of roles. Tech support, right? I mean, we have much nicer voices, and let me help you with that problem. And there's so many jobs to open up to them. And with 12,000 open jobs in Scotland in the tech industry, 12,000 open jobs, okay? It's a huge environment there to entice women to understand it. So I built the Digital Women's Group. One is to target women, talk to them about it, demystify it, make them aware that there's roles out there. And yes, you might be the first or the second woman in that department, but wow, do you have an opportunity to change it, right? Do you have an opportunity to influence it for the next? When they then join CodeClan, we assist them in the coaching and mentoring. Because it is different, gentlemen, when you're the only female in a group, how to get support. We learn different, we talk different, and we need support around that. And so let's just acknowledge it. We're different, we're all different, and we need to have that support unit all around, okay?
It's about barrier to entry as well, mostly.
Really?
So what, I mean, for me, if I'm going into a room where it's all males who, as you put it quite eloquently, are stinky and in a basement and gamers, then I feel comfortable because I'm one of those people.
With the sparkly bomb bath, okay.
Yeah, apart from that. But if there was an environment where it was inclusive, where there was females, then you would naturally attract more diversity with that.
Correct.
Diversity.
Absolutely, absolutely. You got to make the environment conducive to who you're trying to attract, right? Yeah, so, and we've done that at CodeClan. We talk to other people about it. And some people don't recognize what they're doing that turns it off. Okay, so, a lot of times, hey, let's have pizza and beer, okay? I'm gluten intolerant. That doesn't work, okay? Thank you for getting the wine.
We spoke about this.
Yeah, we did. There's just things, and so I had one of my male colleagues come up to me and he goes, I don't understand what inclusive means. I don't get it. I don't understand what we could be doing that doesn't work like this. And I said, so do you say on a Friday night, hey, all, let's go to the pub? Yeah. Okay, how many of the moms can't go because they gotta go home and pick up their kids? Or the guys that have to pick up their kids. So you just put, hey, all, let's go do this. So the next time you got to do something that's more at lunchtime. Maybe we just do something at lunch that you can include others. You went, oh, I never thought about that, right? How about the golf games, right? Honest, here's one. When I first started, and it was at IBM, my sales VP held his forecast meetings in a strip club. I wasn't invited. I was ready to go. Because I'm all about ball busting, right? Oh, let's go. Oh, she looks good. How about her? Right? So, but, he just completely shut out some of his top leaders, top of his salespeople. So, CodeClan, we're making it diverse, supporting them through. But when they graduate, the biggest challenge is when you get into that environment, right? So when you started your job, was there anybody to call up to say, oh my goodness, yeah.
That was the first, there was no one.
And that's where I go to my three things of what we can do now. And you needed a cheerleader because you were wearing your...
I was my cheerleader.
I know you were, but it's sometimes nice to have somebody else be your cheerleader because you were wearing your own super cape.
Yes.
Right, you had your superpower cape on.
To be fair, I had a transgender. So we were sort of like bat and ideas off each other.
There you go. So you had a partner in your crime, you're Batman and you're Robin.
But she was male prior, so it was a bit,
They have the most insight ever.
Yeah.
So bad, so bad, right. So I have this program that I talk about, everybody here has a superpower, everybody. And I'm sorry ladies, we have more superpowers than you could ever believe. Heck, we can replicate, you can't. So we have superpowers that we need to use them, all right? And to use your superpower, and this is male and female, is that there's three things that you can do today. One, actually there's four now. after yesterday. One, you can be a mentor. Okay, so a mentor is somebody who's done it, right? You've gone through it. You can mentor somebody else going through. Now, you might not have the same situation, and it's probably what you're trying to assist companies in understanding, but you can be a mentor to a subject or a person about what you've learned. The next level is you can be a role model. And a lot of people don't like to be role models because you're putting yourself out there and you're talking about, leading the charge, right? But you can be a role model. But mentors are usually quiet role models. You can be a coach. And the difference with a coach and a mentor. So a coach is somebody that sees you every day, sees you in action, and they can pull you aside and say, when you all talk about your golf game, you cut half the room out because you're in your own little clique. And that's exclusive. You're in your own little inclusive environment, but you're cutting other people out. So we don't mind you talking about your game on the weekends, but it would really be nice to say, hey, Joe, what did you do? Right? So you can coach people on how to be inclusive. Right? Doesn't mean you can't go golfing, it just means ask somebody else what they were doing. So a coach catches things and mentions them right there so you can do a correction. And my last one, which is my favorite, is being a cheerleader. Okay? And it takes no time to be a cheerleader. And a cheerleader is who says, thank you, nice job, well done, clever. List of words, put it on your desk, and you will be amazed, especially for women in tech or women in jobs or anybody that you think have a little low self-confidence. All you have to do is be nice. All you have to do is be nice. And especially if you see somebody do something very inclusive. Like, there was a new guy that started, they didn't know anybody, you went up, you got them a cup of coffee. If you go to that person and say, that was really nice at what you did, you will actually see their shoulders go back, their head go up. They all of a sudden have a little sparkle coming out of their ears. And that makes a huge difference for the culture then to grow, the change to happen, the diversity to happen, the inclusion to happen, the words to happen. And so being a cheerleader of diversity, i.e. the title of what we're talking about, we can all be it, and it's really about communication. It's just being nice, being human. And when someone gets recognized for doing something nice, they do it again. And they do it again. We all have kids, right? You do that, you ignore the bad behavior, hopefully, and you commend the good. And it's the same type of thing in your work environment. And I bet you tomorrow if you go in, today's what, Wednesday? If you go in tomorrow and you say something nice to somebody you never talked to really, all of a sudden they go up and they're nice then to the next person, and it's just like pay it forward of being nice. So you can do that around diversity.
Yeah, I think there's a cultural barrier here, particularly in Scotland, where we don't tend to say nice things about people. As it's a very American thing. We like to not be as complimentary. So there's that cultural barrier that we have to go over to actually get there.
Okay, but you did. Someone came up to me, 2 people came up to me today and said, "There you are. You're right next to each other. I wanted to meet you today." You both said that to me. Well, thank you. That made me feel great. That wasn't that hard, was it?
I think some of it might be a bit generational as well when you talk about like Scotland's culture or whatever, where
I think
that kind of banter. Like I think that probably 10 years ago when I was kind of mid-career, there was definitely an element of, the office environment was very banter, and you knew somebody liked you if they slagged you off, and that was kind of, to get your ticket, you had to be able to take the piss out of someone, and that was your kudos. And I do think that is beginning to change now. I don't know if that's, I don't know about the people kind of coming up behind me, whether or not they are like that, but I think certainly my generation, I'm kind of 40 now, and the people that I'm around, we generally are all quite nice to each other, all patting each other's war wounds. So maybe it is a youth thing that you've got that kind of banter, and then that generation's more used to the inclusion. It is more
a bit, but I think men are very cautious because you've been beaten.
Yeah, I don't know what the right thing to say is.
Correct. You've been beaten, and you're in such a horrible place. Say something nice, you get yelled at. Say something not nice, you get yelled at. This gentleman came up to me and said, I need to know how to shake a woman's hand. It's like, I have no idea. Do I do limp? Do I do strong? Do I do this? Do I touch her? And I'm like, okay, let's have a little, let's try. But I do think you're cautious because you're in a no-win situation potentially. And so instead of saying, you look great, get rid of the look biz, have a great day. I hope you have a great day. That doesn't hurt, does it? Just to be nice to someone and say, I hope you have a great day. Walk by. I do it to the people sitting on the street. Hope you have a great day. And they usually go, God bless, and it goes on. And we're having a nice banter, but positive greets positive. And, if you're in an environment where someone doesn't feel comfortable, whether what's ever going on behind the scenes or their gender or their race, or they don't feel accepted, or they've been slagged off and they didn't understand half the words because they're not Scottish, which happens to me all the time. By just being nice to them, you just bring it up a level, and it just works. It just works.
We need subtitles sometimes.
So my marriage is the best marriage in the world because every day there's at least 3 words that he says to me that I don't get. And I go, what? And it is a great, I like Muppet. That's one of my favorites. Muppet. And in the US they'd be like, Gonzo?
So just like to end this kind of by asking if there's one thing that everyone can go away and do tomorrow to be more inclusive, more diverse, and to kind of think about this a bit more, what could they do?
They could ask someone for a cup of tea or coffee that they're different than, and just sit down and say, just want to get to know you. I mean, and that's amazing. It really is amazing to get to know somebody, and you don't have to ask detailed questions of, why do you wear a burqa and get into that whole level if that's it. But to get to know somebody you don't know, because you'll learn something, and then maybe you don't have to have such a diverse board or management team, because you've taken more on yourself to open your brain and have different perspectives. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to add in there, there's a really nice podcast on this topic of diversity and tech and startup. So it's by Gimlet Media, and it's called Startup. And there's like one episode that covers diversity, much of the things we just discussed.
Good, I didn't see it, so I didn't cheat.
But the point back of this whole external perception versus internal, and what does diversity actually mean in the 21st century, that's covered quite well on this topic. So if you are curious to check out, that's
send
one.
it forward. Because I think the more we talk about it, the less an issue it becomes. That's all it needs to be, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. And it's just like mental health or all the other things that we now talk about that now we can socialize and have a conversation about. And before it had such a stigma to it that we would never mention it. So it's really, I think it's, it's the topic du jour. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of tails quite nicely into, a lot of the problems that I have with tech in Glasgow is that we don't talk to each other. Like, we've got all these different pockets. I mean, me, you, Stefan, you work with the University of Glasgow quite a lot. I'm here, I'm doing startup grind, I'm speaking to all these different people, but we never cross. I think we've spoke twice. And we're in the same circles. I mean, for a while we were building very similar businesses and we should have spoken. But if we go out for coffee with someone that we don't know or someone who we would have spoken to or wouldn't have spoken to before, then that solves a lot of the problems. So that kind of one thing that I'd like to do with Startup Grind in general is that if you've got a friend that has an idea or wants to get involved in tech or wants to get involved in startups, just bring them along. If you pay for your ticket, they can come free. That's the kind of community that we want to build. So let me know if anyone has that. Just if everyone could thank Melinda for a fantastic. So I love to continue the conversation. Just let you know, I'm Melinda Matthews on LinkedIn.
I'm MAM Channel on Twitter, and I don't share my Facebook with anybody. So.
And her email address is on the event page if anyone has that.
And it's also on LinkedIn. You can find me that way.
If just finishing this off, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Intella. They are fantastic European patent attorneys, and they've sponsored us for the past couple of months, and they're absolutely brilliant. So Sinead from Intella. If you have any IP questions, go to her. This month we have had Brooklyn Brewery, who have given us lots of beer that we haven't get anywhere near through, so they'll be our sponsor next month as well. Digital Boost, who are doing the video, and that will be up on Start Brain Local YouTube channel if you want to kind of touch on any topics that have been kind of touched on today. If you want to refresh yourself, then it will be on there in the next couple of weeks. And Clockwise for giving us this fantastic space. And if anyone wants to reach you at CodeClan, where can we find you?
Please do. So we're in this building upstairs. We also are in Edinburgh, and we're actually looking to expand outside the Central Belt in the near future. So yeah, come on into CodeClan. It's a great place, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Really good.
Ask us questions.
Perfect. So we've still got some time here. We've still got lots of beer left. We've still got lots of wine, soft drinks, and water if anyone's that way inclined. Just go make some friends and talk to someone who you wouldn't normally talk to. Thank you very much.
Thanks.